Good. Welcome everybody to the Lighthouse project. Today we have a special treat, an amazing class tonight with Gedale Fenster and Rabbi Nasan, Maimon, all the way from the holy city of Yerushalayim. Just a quick background on Rabbi Nasan Maimon. Gedale, when I entered his classes about 5 years ago, he opened us up, all of us, to the world of Breslov, and he constantly brought a lot of teachers all the way from Israel coming here. Rabbi Nasan Maimon, who is also a mentor to Gedale as well, is to me one of the masters of everything Breslov, especially in the English world. He has a website called BreslovTorah.com, which has, I can't tell you how many, hundreds and hundreds of classes. He has all of Likutei Maharan, which is Rabbi Nachman's main work, every single class, Likutei Halachot, all the main classes of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. An incredible teacher. My main inspiration. He's my main Rav, and it's a huge honor to have him here, and especially again tonight in the tandem class with Gedale. So you guys are all in for a treat tonight. And with that being said, I want to dedicate tonight's classes in memory of Devorah Pega Bat Shmuel Zichrono Livracha, Menachem Mendel Ben Elchanan Zichrono. Tonight's sponsors: Shani Baum for the refuah of Ron Ben Ahuva, Alex Schuster in honor of Margarita Bot Celia, Mario Lichtenstein, refuah for Ora Bat Ida, Moshe Lippe Ben Esther, Yerachmiel Daniel Ben Tova Basha.
Amen.
Zalman Herschel Ben Chaya Rachel for the refuah of Yerachmiel Daniel Ben Tova Basha, and Parnasa and Zivu for Leah Bat Binyamin.
Amen.
Liol Nishmat Shlomo Ben Malka Zichrono Livracha.
Amen.
Refuah Shlema David Ben Shoshana.
Amen.
And it's also sponsored tonight by Stephanie Polak Van for the Liul Nishmat of her late husband, Moti Winkler, Yechiel Mordechai Zichrono Livracha Ben Yerucham Fishel, which is Moti's Yortex, which starts tonight, Bob Thomas. May his neshama have an aliyah, and may he continue to be an advocate for her, her son, the family, and Klal Yisrael, his great Zayde Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Verditchev.
Amen.
Also tonight's class is for the refuah shlema of Ava Bat Ilana Esther, and anonymous for Peretz Ben Chana to have refuah shlema physically and successfully releasing anger without any tension.
Amen.
Anonymous for the refuah shlema of Yosef Ben Sarah.
Amen.
And finally, anonymous for the refuah shlema of Yerachmiel Daniel Ben Tova.
Amen. Amen. So welcome, guys. Welcome to the Lighthouse. Obviously Rabbi. I've known Rabbi Maimon for. Want to just close the door if you don't mind, please? Thank you. I personally have known Rabbi Maimon for over 20 years, Rabbi? 20 years. So the first 10 years, before I even began speaking, I spent literally maybe 10,000 hours listening to his classes. He was the English version of the audio. Rabbi Kramer was the written version. So this is where I think, repeated Likutei Maharan, 20 times, and over again before even teaching. This is literally Rabbi Maimon was the source of all my basically understanding these teachings for so long. So this is where I've paid, and today we have him here. You're going to see the rabbi's soft voice, the rabbi's gentle nature, and his clarity. It's very important to have a teacher that has clarity. Sometimes we have a lot of Breslov teachers, but the English is a little broken. But you'll see Rabbi Maimon's English and Rabbi Maimon's clarity, and Rabbi Maimon happens to be the son-in-law, and Rabbi Kramer is also the son-in-law of the holy Rabbi Rosenfeld, who actually brought Breslov to America. So this is like you're talking to the, really the source of the source. So today's class, we're going to talk about a lot of subjects. So basically we can bounce around. We're going to take some audience questions from the audience, and let's get going. So Rabbi, welcome here. Thank you.
And I think the title of the class was Using Old Wisdom to Fix New Problems. And I would say, Rabbi, the majority of people, they go to therapists, they go to situations and go through things in life. I think ultimately our whole goal is to get to the right consciousness, to be able to look at any situation we're going through as a growth opportunity or as something that we're lacking. And it's always rooted usually in wisdom or dat. I think that Rabbi Nachman was always spoke about, forget about your thoughts, focus more on wisdom, on your mindset, on your strategy. And I think that's really the key. We don't want to spend time just worrying about what are we thinking about. We want to focus on
building a right mindset, bringing a right strategy, and recognizing that ultimately that is the goal. Once we have the right strategy, then we're able to look at the same situations completely different in an expanding consciousness, and then we're able to go through life as challenges and not be stuck in threats, etc. So Rabbi, we want to talk maybe about lesson 138, just basically things where you've seen the majority of questions that you're getting, where people are getting stuck on, and things that you can relate. Please go ahead, Rabbi.
We're living
maybe you want to start with the story about the
Sure. There's a parable that Rabbi Nachman told. all parables, they say that Rabbi Nachman said that when somebody wants to teach a lesson, one of the most effective ways to get the message across is a story. He said people know that usually when you want to put children to sleep, you do it using a bedtime story. And he said, I say that when people are spiritually asleep and you want to wake them up, it's the right story that could do that most effectively. And Rabbi Nachman told a number of very powerful, effective stories and parables. One of them that Gedale mentioned that he'd like to have mentioned tonight. He told about a person who had a dream one night, and in the dream he sees himself going to a city in a distant place, and he sees a bridge in the city, and under the bridge he sees that there's a treasure, an incredible treasure worth incredible amount of money, something that could sustain a person for 5 lifetimes. And he sees exactly the city, the location, everything, and he's in shock. I guess Hashem loves me, that he decided to reveal this secret to me. So he doesn't tell anybody about it. He takes off, he makes a trip, he goes there, and sure enough, it looks exactly like he saw it in the dream. The city, the bridge, everything is perfect, but there's a problem. He sees a guard over there. The municipality appointed a guard in case, because the bridge is such a valuable asset to the city. They don't want anybody doing any damage or anything, and the guard is walking back and forth there. So he knows he can't start digging over there. The minute he digs, they'll arrest him. So he's thinking what to do. He tries to see, is the guard going to leave? The guard is there, solid. So he decides he's got no choice. He approaches the guard and he says, I know this is going to sound funny or ridiculous, but I had a dream, and in my dream, I live in a distant city. I don't know this city from anything. I saw this bridge, I saw this, and it was revealed to me that right over there, if I dig, I'm going to find a tremendous treasure, and I'll be happy to share it to split it with you. Is it okay? The guard looks at him and says, silly people, what kind of ridiculous nonsense. You had a dream, and now... He says, I had a dream also. And in my dream, I saw somebody, Jacob Goldstein. And they told me in the dream he lives in this city, and they told me that in his backyard there's a treasure. You think I paid any attention to that? Dreams are nonsense. And he doesn't know that he's talking to Jacob Goldstein, who lives in that exact city that he's talking about. And the guy hears it and he gets the message. He realizes, who knows? Maybe what the dream he had was phase 1 to bring him over here so that he could hear the end of the dream. So sure enough, he goes back home and he digs in his own backyard and he finds the treasure. And Rabbi Nachman said that this is a message for us. Many people are searching for solutions in life, searching for solutions. We have problems, emotional all kinds of problems. And we're looking for solutions, and we need to buy a telescope that can look far enough away. Some people travel to Tibet, and some people travel to all kinds of distant places to find the guru or the specialist or the doctor or the mikubal that's going to solve my problem. And Rabbi Nachman said people don't know that the solution is in your own backyard. The solution is inside of you. Hashem created each and every one of us. He created us with the problems. He created us with the solutions to the problems. It's inside of you. If you will work on yourself, on improving yourself, all of your problems will be solved. How am I supposed to do that? The answer is the Torah. Rabbi Nachman's, the entire Torah teaches a person self-improvement. You don't need binoculars. You don't need a telescope. You need the books, and you need to apply it to yourself. Rabbi Nachman writes in a place, there's a pasuk in Tehillim in Psalms, L'cho omar libi, that the Torah is speaking to me, to my heart. There are many people that hear a message and they say, wow,
that neighbor, they really need to hear this. This person has problems with anger. They should really, they assume that it's the other person that has the problems. And Rabbi Nachman emphasizes, as the Torah does, it's all about me. Everything I'm studying, anything, first look inside of yourself and see how to apply it to yourself. Now the question is, everybody knows it's much easier to see things wrong with other people. The most difficult thing in the world is to see what's wrong with me. And Rabbi Nachman says there's a solution to that also, that the tzaddik has eyes. There's a pasuk, Einei Hashem el tzaddikim. Hashem shares his eyes with the righteous people. He gives them the ability to see what we cannot see sometimes. You get a person who goes into a doctor for his annual checkup, and he says, "Hi doc, I'm here for my annual checkup, and I don't think I really need this. I feel like a bull, strong as a bull. Doc, you look a little pale. You taking your vitamins?" And the doctor smiles and says, "Sure, let's take the test." And they take the test, and the next morning the receptionist gets on the phone. The doctor said he'd like to see you immediately. He comes in, he says, "Doc, must be a mistake with the computer aside. I'm feeling strong as a bull." He says, "You're right. I know you're feeling strong, but let me show you. Let me show you these pictures of what's going on inside you. There's a growth that's developing, and this thing is very dangerous." He says, "But how could it be? I feel great." He says, "You're right. The nature of this illness is that the first 3 months you will not feel anything at all. But I'm going to show you the progression that if you continue, if you don't treat this situation, you're going to see changes taking place, etc." That's on a physical level. On a spiritual level, it's the same thing. We go to the doctor. The doctor is the Torah. The doctor is the tzaddik who sees things that we cannot see. And the right doctor, the teachings of the Torah and the tzaddik open a person's eyes to be able to see inside of myself, to be able to see that I thought I was great, I thought I was perfect. Suddenly I'm coming to realize certain things that need tweaking, that need improvement inside of me. And especially the heart. Everybody knows the heart is the driver of the body. Gedale mentioned that there's the mind, there's chachma. The Torah teaches us that Hashem created the world with chachma, with knowledge, with wisdom. And part of our mission in this world is to see the wisdom in everything around us, in everything, and to use that to connect me, to attach me to Hashem, to the source. But Rabbi Nachman says, the Gemara says, that non-Jews also have chachma. They also have chachma. So what's the difference between the chachma that they have and the chachma that we have? The difference is that their chachma is without heart. It's heartless. People know that 100 years ago, 50 years ago, the nation of Germany, the German scientists were recognized, world recognition to today, the greatest minds in technology, to be able to study technology and to be able, the best cars, the best this. Look where their knowledge took them. They were able to commit atrocities that the worst animals are not capable of doing. A lion is not capable of torturing. A lion will kill for food. The wildest animals, a bear, will not kill just for the fun of it or needlessly. It'll kill only if it needs the food or if it's being threatened. And these smart people, so what were they missing? They were smart, they are intelligent, heartless. It's chachma without heart. And in Judaism, we're told that you need both. You need the chachma, the intellect, and you need a proper heart. And now, how do you develop? Where do you get the heart? Our Torah begins with the letter Bet, Bereshit, and the last letter in the Torah is Lamed, Lev. The Torah is the book that teaches us what the heart is all about and how to develop a good heart, to have a proper heart. When Hashem speaks about the holy temple in Israel, which is like the battery of the entire world, Hashem says, V'hoyu einai v'libi sham. My eyes and my heart are there. The eyes represent the chachma, the knowledge. I see what you means I understand what you're saying. And the heart is it's the combination of these two that's a real winning combination.
Beautiful, beautiful. So what's really, I see, I mean, as far as me, and I see the majority of people, what's stopping us from getting to our heart, and it's clearly the first level is usually our desires, which is the nefesh, and then we have to deal with the ruach, which is the emotions. So practically, I mean, the answers, like Rabbi Nachman says in lesson 138, the answers are in your heart. The voice in your heart is the intuition, the ability to have that clarity. But we have obstacles to get there. And that's usually, the first step is usually our desires. So to the extent that we're able to conquer our desires, then we are able to already notice our emotions. And then once we're able to be mindful, notice our emotions, then we could start listening to the heart. And I think that's something that I think a lot of people are trying to have spiritual experience, but there has to be a lot of cutting in one area. And that's something, as far as when I got into Breslov, I had to change a lot of my lifestyle, and I had to cut a lot of things out because I was noticing that, one days I would watch certain things, the next day I'm trying to pray, and then I feel like there's no signal. And I got that I was very sensitive to not having a signal. And when you're sitting there praying when there's no signal, I think that's very painful. And then you start saying, is this desire that worth me going out speaking to my Creator with no signal? That's when I started making changes, because I didn't feel, or I would study something, and I would feel like reading something and would just not comprehend. I couldn't comprehend what I was reading. And I felt really, not that I felt dumb, but I felt like something's off. There's a blockage. So we shouldn't say, hey, I'm not smart enough. Because listen, I went to public school. I have no business becoming, this. It's just, I was able to make certain cuts in my life that allowed me to certainly have that kind of the wisdom to penetrate. And I think that's all of us, we have that calling. But it all starts with, again, the desires, which is usually money, sex, and food. And to the extent that you're able to channel that in a spiritual way, then you can start noticing your emotions and not being taken over by your ruach, which is today, anxiety, I have a ruach. People say I'm in a bad mood, I have anxiety, I feel despair. That means there's a wind taking you. So these two things are very, very connected. And usually, unfortunately, the coping system today to deal with something that hurts or bothers us is just to check out. And that blocks the signal. So this is why, I think Rabbi Nachman's teachings is very about, meeting your Creator where you are, which is very, very important, not to have the guilt or shame or the embarrassment, but you're not going to get a certain level of clarity unless there is some cutting in some areas. And that's why my classes are, with the men, I start with the 40-day challenge, which is a spiritual cleansing, or the women also. First, I really do, because I'm working on trying to develop the person to become the best version of him. I don't like to just settle for, Friday night dinner with a few friends and that's your whole spirituality. The first has to be, you have to cut something. You have to cut. It could be where a person's using food as, to stuff his face instead of facing his stuff. That's going to block you. Or he's using, unfortunately, pigama bris, which is sexual impurity to escape from life. And that's really what's causing us not to be able to feel this light, and this light of Rab Nachman. So it's really the diet's first, the cleansing is first. And I always tell people, first you have to really work on the cleansing, and then you'll see the stuff goes in, it just penetrates you, and as you start feeling that energy, you're like, wow, where was I the whole time? So this is where we have to start making decisions in our life, and to say, okay, what is this desire worth it? Sometimes when Rab Nachman says in lesson 3, you're listening to Jay-Z or you're listening to Beyonce, but these kind of songs, they lift you up, but unfortunately, they also drag you down. So there's a lot of cutting that I had to do. I just want to be frank with everybody, be honest, that I had to cut certain music. I love certain music, I had to cut it. Certain food I had to cut. And then from the cutting, I was able to get this experience to hear a class of Rabbi Maimon, understand the deepness of the class. And that joy was greater than the desire and all that. So I just want to, because otherwise we keep on, there's a reason why the light's not coming in. This is what Rabbi Nachman says in lesson 172. it's not a lack of light. It's too many shadows. There's a lot of shadows blocking the light. It's like, the guy's on the beach, he's got an umbrella on, and he's wondering why he's not getting the sun. So our job really, doing a lot of recovery to our best self is really removing those shadows. And they first start with the desires, which is obviously, the area of money and the area of relations and the area of food. And then it starts really noticing our emotions instead of letting our emotions run our lives. Then you can sit there and have spiritual experiences that you probably would never have. And the advantage of that is, when you have that, you're able to have that clarity. You ask a question and your heart will tell you the answer. And that's, I don't know what that's worth today. When you have clarity in your life, I think that's priceless. So this is what Reb Nachman really taught me, is really, really first, you got to work on this. And any trainer, you go see a trainer, he's going to tell you, listen, let me see your diet. What are you eating? Cut this, cut that. He doesn't expect, first is the cutting, then you'll see the progress. And hopefully in life is when you feel better about yourself, and when you feel the light, you want to now invest in yourself more. And I think that's really the key to get that momentum going.
If I could comment, we say that the Torah consists of 613 commandments. That's how most people know it. But in the Zohar HaKadosh, it refers to it as 613 packages of advice, that every line in the Torah is advice. If you look at what the Torah begins with, the opening lines, V'ha'oretz hoisa sohu vavohu v'choshech al pnei tehom, that Hashem began the world, started the world with darkness. It started, and it mentions 4 aspects, 4 versions of darkness. And then it says, Hashem said, let there be light, and there was light. And that's a message for us, like Gedale is explaining, that in order to be able to get to the light, you have to realize that there's darkness, and you have to be able to address that first. Eliminate, identify, recognize what's the darkness in my life, try to remove that, and then I'm available, I avail myself to the light. King David says in Tehillim, Sur Meirah, turn away from evil, va'asei tov, and do good. It means there's a recognition that in this world, Rabbi Nachman expounds on this, that out of everything that Hashem created in this world, the birds, the trees, the animals, everything, and even in the heavenly worlds, the angels, the most important thing in creation is the human being and the Jew. The entire creation revolves around us. Why? What makes us superior to angels? Angels are all spiritual. They're on a very high level. We have something that they don't. We have free choice. We are presented with good and evil. Both exist in this world, and we can choose either one. And to the degree that I train myself, I teach myself to choose to avoid the evil, to stay away from it, to abstain from this, I avail myself to the good. I have the opportunity to get more of the good, more of the light. Fruit, vegetables, there's a klipa, there's a husk. You have to first remove the husk in order to get to the fruit. This is all teaching us about life, that in order to advance in life, there always has to be this recognition. Look carefully, recognize the negativity, get rid of the negativity, and you'll avail yourself to the positive.
Beautiful. Another thing that I want to speak about is one of the things that obviously what Nachman's teachings really, really helped me is having this concept of faith it till you make it, which is something where, unfortunately today, the rational mind is always seeking answers for every situation, where Reb Nachman's telling you just jump to a place of faith. Faith it till you make it. He told his followers, start smiling and eventually you'll smile for the right reason. And this is something that I see that's very difficult for people to think greater than they feel. This is a common, obviously running groups in rehab centers and stuff like that. The hardest thing is to get out of the rational mind, which, the world is always, especially the world of therapy, who can I blame? Who can I, why is this happening to me? Where Reb Nachman's approach was completely different. He's telling you, faith it till you make it. Not in a being completely not serious, but to be able to feel better than you feel currently by being able to close your eyes to a place called faith. Not to have faith, to go to faith. See, that's the difference. When we tell people have faith, they're going to tell me, how can I have faith? Look what's happening to me. When we tell you go here, you go. It doesn't require the mind. And one of the things that I was able to, that have helped me tremendously, is anytime I'm dealing with a situation in my life, I'm able to already enhance that feeling before by throwing, let's say, planning a party before, already celebrating the Yeshua, or celebrating the things that are going to work out. And I think this is what the world is very hard for people to do that, to celebrate in advance, because maybe they don't think, well, how about if it doesn't work out? And how do I know it's going to work out? And maybe I'm just being ridiculous, and maybe this is too hiji-biji. But this is what the whole Torah is about, being able. Nachman mentioned this many times. Whatever you want, already put yourself already, like the end goal. That means we have to start walking around like we already won, instead of walking around speaking defeat and expecting to win. And this is where I think today, people are walking around with a lot of self-pity, and they want a lot of, they want people to help them, but at the end of the day, we need a lot of strength. And we need to understand the Yetzer Hara's job is to keep you in that problem. And the way to do it is completely surrender yourself to already the tachlis, which is the ultimate goal, which is all good. So that's one of the things that have helped me is, doing a form of visualization, doing celebrating in advance. And once you become it, you already almost attract that situation. This is why, the concept Rav Nachman says, joy is the solution, joy is the exit strategy. That means if I'm able to deal with a situation with joy, that will bring me the solution. And in order to have joy, to deal with the current circumstances, to be able to take it, have an emotion of joy before, that really, Rav Nachman says in lesson 25, that breaks open any kind of klippas, any kind of obstacles. So this is one of the things that I can't tell you enough about Rav Nachman. You don't have to be all the time overthinking things. You can just go to a place where you want to be. And I think that's super refreshing in today's days of control, worry, and exhaustion.
The Torah speaks about adversaries, the different adversaries that the Jewish people encountered throughout the generations. And the worst adversary out of all is called Amalek. Amalek was a nation that the Torah defines as Reshit Goyim, the leader of all 70 nations. And we're taught that each one of the 70 nations has different negative elements inside of them. Amalek was a composite of all the negativity of all 70 nations put together, the ultimate in evil. In fact, there's a pasuk in the beginning, in the first parsha of the Torah, Bereshit, where it uses the terminology Rak Ra Kol Hayom, only evil all day. And the last letters of those four words, Rak, Ra, Kol, Hayom, spell the word Amalek. The Zohar tells us that you know what Amalek is? Amalek is doubt. Doubt, safek. The word safek in Hebrew, if you add up the letters, 60 plus 80 plus 100 is 240. The word Amalek is 240. What Gedale just mentioned, that the beginning of Judaism and the beginning of success in life requires a leap of faith. It's a leap of faith. It's recognizing that there's a creator to the world. Even though I have many questions, there's many things I don't understand. In the book, the Kuzari, it writes, if you would understand Hashem, you would be Hashem. In order for you to understand Hashem, you have to be Hashem. Right. The fact that there are things we don't understand makes perfect sense. That's very rationally correct. That I don't understand the creator of the entire world and the universe and all the world. That's very logical. So first of all, we're starting with a leap of faith there, number one, and a leap of faith in yourself. It's not enough to believe that there's a Hashem, and if he was capable of creating this world and operating this world, he must be pretty good. There must be a lot of good there with all of our questions. But there's also a leap of faith regarding me personally. I can succeed. I will succeed. Positive thinking, positive energy. Rabbi Nachman writes that thoughts are very powerful. Thoughts can kill and thoughts can give life. If a person sees themselves thinking negatively, like Gedale pointed out, not going to make it, not going to this, then that's going to drag the person to that place. A person has to fight this battle that I'm not going to allow myself to doubt Hashem, to doubt myself. And starting off with that, the Torah says, Ve'erastichli ve'emuna v'yodates Hashem. Hashem says, you'll wed yourself, you'll connect to me with faith, and then you'll get to understand me correctly. One of the greatest prophets that's mentioned in the Torah, Yechezkel, Ezekiel, he starts his prophecy with the words that he was at the edge of a river and the heavens opened up and he saw heaven, he saw angels, he describes the throne of Hashem, and the deepest secrets of the Torah, some of the deepest secrets are found there. Rabbi Nachman's student, Rabbi Nasan, points out those first words, the heavens opened up and I was able to see heavenly things, those 4 words, Niftechu Hashamayim, 5 words, Vo'ere Maret Elokim, the first letters spell the word Emunah, faith. Hashem says, if you're willing to trust me, if you're willing to start our relationship with faith and trust, I'll open the curtain, you will see, you will understand, you'll get to a level of understanding. As Gedale pointed out, the mistake today, it's all about instant gratification. If I press the button on the computer, I got time to change the computer.
Or safety.
Exactly. If I press the button on my wife, she doesn't respond right away, time for a new wife. And that's not the deal. That's not the way it works in life, and it's not the way it works in religion. A person needs to start with faith, a level of faith and trust and confidence, and then by continuing, by not standing still, going forward, the person gets to the finish line.
Another thing we want to talk about, obviously, is, many men. This is a main conversation. I'm at this level, my spouse is at that level, or this person I'm dating is not at a different level. And this is a common thing. Obviously, we're not. This is not an episode of the Smurfs. Obviously, everybody's not a Smurf. So there's going to be difficult people in your life, and even if you marry the person that says this is who I am, this is my profile, I promise you they will change. I promise you they will change, because resistance is what makes you grow. And this is unfortunately, we're looking for too much safety today. You're looking for way too much safety today. People are living on safety. You have to understand something, no matter who, because ultimately the ultimate goal in life is for you to become the best version of you. And the best way to grow is through resistance. Because ultimately these difficult people, which is the number one question I always ask people, did this person get you closer to your Creator? If the answer is yes, then thank your Creator for that person. Sometimes we want too much safety, and we want to look for a spouse. Oh, I want safety. I want to be guaranteed. I want to be sure. You're not guaranteed anything. You're not guaranteed anything, and people do change, believe it or not. People do change. So when you already know that people change anyway, and I think heaven makes the person change because, again, the ultimate job is for you to get closer, and to you to grow, and you should have compassion on that person. At the end of the day, you end up getting compassion for that person. So this is why sometimes in dating and sometimes in marriage, we're looking for too much what's wrong instead of what's right. We're looking for, and I've seen this a common thing in across the board, even marriage itself or any business itself, it's a big wave. When things are good, praise the Creator. When things are rough, cry out to your Creator. And this is the cycle. And believe me, I've learned the teachings for 20 years, and I just see the same patterns. When things are good, praise, run, be happy. When things are rough, cry out to your Creator. You can't be saved from this wave. And when you come with that strategy that I'm either running or returning, then you start becoming comfortable being uncomfortable. And you don't make a problem more of a problem instead of saying, it's over, it's hysteria. No, it's a contraction. It's a contraction, and there'll be an expansion. And this is one of the greatest things that Rabbi Nachman taught me, how to deal with expansions and contractions. Expansions and contractions all over the world. they're in business, they're in relationships, they're in your own spirituality. You have days where you feel inspired, you're expanded, you have mindset, you have clarity, and there's days where you need 5 Red Bulls to even come to a class. There's days that I need 5 Red Bulls just to show up here today. And it's not the level of knowledge, it's just there's days that if you didn't have the darkness, you wouldn't appreciate the light, and if you had too much light, then you would take it for granted. So this is the way the world is running. You want to have a class action lawsuit against your creator, you could do that also, but at the end of the day, you have to learn how to deal with the wave. You have to learn how to deal with the wave. And then that's one of the greatest things, lesson 6, is running and returning concept. And I really apply that to my whole life. I'm in an expansion, wonderful. I'm in a contraction, there'll be an expansion. And I would say it's the same thing as working out. When you're lifting the weights, you can't stay there forever. You got to put it down. And when you're down, you can't stay there forever. You got to put it up. And that contraction, that resistance is what creates the muscle. And this is pretty much the same way that, I think we're too programmed to, Alexa, pray for God, pray to God. No, you're going to pray sometimes with happiness and gratitude. There's times you're going to pray with a broken heart. And that's really the understanding that Rabbi Nachman gives us. This is not a cookie cutter, one size fits all you can eat buffet. This is different states of your life. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It doesn't mean you should talk bad to yourself. It means this is the cycle of life, and the resilience is a key to deal with the downs. And when you're up, enjoy it. It's not going to be there forever, but you can hope that you'll get to that other high. Again, that's one of the, honestly, that Torah really, it just basically taught me how to be resilient in any situation.
If I can comment, when Hashem created the world, again, one of the second or third line in the Torah, it says, Vayihi Erev, Vayihi Voker, Yom Echad. It was night, it was morning, one day. And Hashem teaches us a cycle. A cycle is darkness, then light. That's a complete cycle. There's no other way. Hashem has programmed the world. First there's darkness, then there's light. I always mention people that have gone to a hospital, someone that's on a heart machine. As long as the monitor is going like this, the patient is alive. The minute the monitor is going like this, we lost the patient. So long as a person is experiencing highs and lows, they know that they're living. They're alive in this world. That's perfect. That's perfectly okay. If a person is stagnating, going nowhere, that's not living anymore. And Rabbi Nachman teaches us, the Torah tells us about a dream. Paro had a dream, the Pharaoh had a dream. In his dream, he saw 7 fat cows, 7 skinny cows. And the skinny ones swallowed up the fat ones, and they remained perfectly skinny. It looked like it never happened. And then the dream appears twice, and Paro goes to all of his scientists, to all of his seers to interpret it. None of them can interpret it correctly. He changed one detail in the dream, and by seeing that they didn't catch it, he knew that their interpretations weren't valid. When he tells over the dream to Joseph, Yosef says, excuse me, that wasn't what you saw. You weren't standing at the edge of the river, you were standing on the river. And as soon as Paro heard that, he perked up. He said, this guy knows. And Yosef interprets the dream that the 7 fat and the skinny means there's going to be 7 good years and 7 bad years. And now the question is, so what's the solution? How do you deal with this? Everybody has that, and most people, when the bad comes, they're in deep trouble. And Yosef said, you need somebody very, very smart to be able to tell you how to deal with this. So Paro says to him, I'm looking at him. I don't have to look anywhere else. If you know this, you tell me what to do. And he says, I'll tell you exactly what to do. When during the 7 good years, it's not enough to just pay your bills. You have to put aside some money into savings, knowing and expecting that it's not necessarily going to be like this always. And to be ready for the rainy day, to put aside a little bit of savings. And sure enough, Yosef saved the land of Egypt. He saved the world economy. During the 7 good years, he packed in, they produced double, triple. They didn't spend it. Not like today's mentality, I'm making some money, My best friends at the bank call me and they say, we have a gift for you. You're such a wonderful person. Here's 2 credit cards, one for you and one for your wife, so that you can get into debt. So if you're earning 200,000, you know you can spend 300,000. You have more bank power. Because we love you, because you're such a wonderful citizen, because we're digging a hole for you. We're digging a ditch for you to bury you. Because the interest on that money, when you won't be able to pay it back, is going to knock you out of the box. So the Torah teaches us 7 good ups and downs. That's going to have to happen. When you're up, don't do 100, do 200%. Do score, maximize, knowing that there's going to be times when you're not going to feel that high. And if you were exceptionally good when you were high, it's going to carry you through the low. You're going to be able to make it through that low, and then there's going to be another high. Every time it gets dark at night, and then it gets darker, we know that morning is coming. Every time that a person experiences a yerida, a down, like Gedale said in chapter 6 in the Quran, there's going to be a high. If you made the right preparation, if when you were feeling good, whether it's feeling good in marriage, spouse, don't try for 100, try for 200%. Give everything you got when it's good, knowing that we are human. We're all human. There are times we're feeling better, times we're feeling worse. If I invest 200% when I'm feeling good, it's going to carry us through those lows, and we're going to survive and succeed.
Even to the point where the darkness is actually where you're building the vessel. So it's not that's even better when you recognize that the darkness itself is a place where you're actually creating the new higher. Then you look at darkness and you start looking at darkness completely different. Another thing that I've recognized, obviously, is the element of time. Rabbi Nasan speaks about the koach of the medame, the imagination, the aspect of imagination, which is really the I would say, related to anxiety. How long is this going to happen? The constant, I think Rabbi Nasan says in that same halach of the 7 good years and 7 bad years, sometimes you forget about the good because the 7 bad years ate the good. So you forget even about the good. You had 7 good years, and then the 7 bad years came, and then you're like, I have nothing. No, you can't remember. Don't let the bad swallow the good. And this is where today, resentment. You're married, you're in a relationship. They've done so many good things. They do one thing wrong. That's it. Shchita, done. I don't want to talk to you. You're dead to me. That's the concept of the 7 bad years eating the good. And this is where the concept of a zamra, sing with what you got, the ability to extract music, extract the good instead of focusing on the bad and then letting the bad overweigh the good. And this is one of the things with couples itself, I try to get them, okay, what do you like about that person? What do you like about the situation? And then that good shifts and ends up becoming the good overpowers the bad versus the bad overpowering the good. And this is all only an emotional reaction. It's not reality. If you did the reality, you would see that the good always outweighs the bad. But when the emotions are kicking in, you'll always look at the worst case scenario. And this is very important to be able to get out of your head and get into the moment. Look at the situation as is, not worse than it is. Don't let the 7 cows, 7 years of bad, swallow up everything. And you see so many people with COVID, unfortunately with COVID, their whole spirituality went down the drain because of a virus. The whole 10 years of going to synagogue, 7 years, 5 years of learning. No, I'm done. Make sure in heaven they ask you for a vaccine. Make sure that's the story you want to give. But don't let the bad one year. That's it. Squash 7 years of emunah. That's it. I'm despairing because of COVID. I'm done with everything. What are you done with? So this is an area where you have to get your mind out of this despair mindset and get back into repair mindset, where you don't let the bad outweigh the good. And this is the way we do it, is by focusing on the situation, not the worst part about the situation. See it as is, not worse than it is.
I left out a very important detail that Gedale mentioned just to sharpen it a drop. In that dream that Paro had, the 7 skinnies swallowed up the bad, and then it says, and it's as if the 7 fat ones never were. And Rabbi Nachman emphasizes that's the point, that's the real point here. All of us have good times and bad times. The mistake is that when the bad times come, we forget that it was ever good. There's that never word. She never, he never, that never word is the biggest mistake, I never said, it's not true. In most cases, if you'll really be honest, when you get emotional, like when the emotions take over, you forget. But it's not true. That never word is not true. We never had a good time. She never did all of that stuff. That's coming from that Yetzer Hara, that evil inclination. And a person needs to know that that's what he's all about. He's going to try to magnify the negative and shrink the positive. Whereas Judaism defines ma'at min ha'or docha harbe choshech. If this room is 1,000 cubic feet of darkness, and I light a match, I light a candle that's a 1-inch flame, that 1-inch flame can illuminate the room. I can see my way throughout the room. The ratio of good to bad, if I say that my neighbor or my son or my daughter or my wife or my husband does 100 wrong things, there's 100 things wrong, and there's one good thing, it's possible that that's success, that's not failure. The one good is much more significant than 100 negative. Who says? The answer is the Torah says. There's actually a pasuk in the Torah that says every good deed that we do creates a positive angel. Every sin we commit creates a negative angel. So now the Torah writes that when these angels come before the heavenly court, if there's 999 negative angels and one positive, that's enough to remove that person from punishment, from going down. One im yesh olav malach echod mini elef, 1 out of 1,000, pidaehu mirede shachas. That person goes to Gan Eden. That person goes to paradise. That's how Hashem operates. Hashem is perfect. The one perfect being in existence doesn't say that this person has a fault or 3 faults. Not interested. I can't marry that person, or I can't live with that person. Hashem says if there's 999 flaws and one good thing, that's a good person. That's already a good person. And Hashem is setting an example for us to what extent we have to focus on the good. That's in people, and that's in a situation in life. A person's in jail, a person's in prison, going through a problem. If they can find one positive thing to show how it could be worse, or there's one good thing about my situation, it's very likely that person's going to get out of the problem and get to the solution. Mm-hmm. That little bit of light, finding that little bit of light within the darkness.
Right. I think that's exactly the morning ritual, is creating that light in the day. But I would say the majority of why we remember every insult, but we don't remember the compliments, is because our brain is wired to protect us, not to make us happy. And we have to understand the science of our brain also. You know, you have a traumatic event, your brain's protecting you from it, but it's not there to make you happy. So you have to recognize also, it's a lot of the things is because we keep on thinking about it over and over. But if we look at it as a third party, we would recognize that we're definitely overdoing it. One of the things let's talk a little bit about bittul. One of the things that's really, really helped me is this concept called surrender, right? Surrender, Rabbi Nachman spoke about a lot of the times, is called bittul. Bittul is to nullify yourself. Basically, the English word for bittul is to let it go. Let it go. Surrender. Bittul yourself to a much bigger picture. I would say the majority of the issues today, people have a hard time letting go. They have a hard time letting go. They bring in old news into new relationships. They somehow the letting go thing is so difficult. And this is, I think this year, I've spent so much time on letting it go. And the reason why we want to let it go is because if we don't let things go, we stay in that consciousness. You know, if you don't let go of the past relationship, next thing you know, you're going to bring these fears into new relationships. And then what's going to happen? You're going to end up sabotaging the relationships. Because we don't let go of other things, we just constantly bring in the same patterns. And this is why our Creator makes us constantly have the same test over and over, because He's teaching us things that have to be surrendered. And one of the greatest things that have helped me pretty much is not really knowing more, letting go more. That means you don't have to be smarter. You just have to be more humble by letting things go. And the way we keep things in is the resistance. Somebody insulted you, let it go. Somebody did, let it go. Let it go. You're letting go for yourself. The reason why you're letting go is because the more you let go, the more happier you'll be. The more happier you'll be, the better the signal in heaven you will get. As our sages say, that your Creator's own dwells with a person who's in a good state of mind, not a person who's holding in 10 years of trauma, resentment, and this. You're not going to get a signal. Maybe you'll get CNN. That's it, but you won't get anything else. You're not going to get signals. This is why I tell people: make sure you let things go, because when you don't let go, you're blocking your own heart. You're sabotaging your own signal. You're sabotaging your own success. And the way to let it go, Rabbi Nachman says, is to make yourself like nothing. Like nothing. And usually the reason why we don't let go is because we take things too personal. And the reason why we take things personal is because we think too much about ourselves. So, like we said, the way somebody treats you is a reflection of themselves. So once you recognize that guy is treating me like that because he needs a refuah shlema, and we would never treat somebody the wrong way unless we are not in a good state. So the way to let it go is to recognize is that his limitations have nothing to do with my self-esteem. That person's limitations has nothing to do with my happiness. Then you can let go not only will you let go, but you'll end up praying for the person. And we could see this from Moshe Rabbeinu. He got insulted by Lashon Hara by Miriam. Not only did he let it go, but he prayed for her. And I think this is the message. Why? Because he was the humblest man in the world. The fact that looks like humility is not being self-centered, and not only not taking it personal, and not only that, but going out there and showing compassion to that guy. That's being superhuman. But ultimately, that's where we want to go. Instead of getting insulted, holding it in, telling everybody about how we got insulted, triggering old news, don't become, the way somebody treats you is a reflection of themselves. It has nothing to do with your self-esteem. Don't make everything about you. Let it go. And not only that, pray for that person who created that insult. Then you can get to the VIP happiness, letting go mindset.
Is very, I believe.
I spent 2 years on letting go.
Most people, if they're offered a pill, somebody could give you a pill that you wouldn't forget. You would be able to remember everything. $1,000, $25,000. Imagine if you didn't forget anything. What could be better than that? Rabbi Nachman says that I say that forgetting is a blessing.
Right.
Because there are certain things which, if you couldn't forget it, you couldn't exist. A person who goes to the dentist and has to have 3 wisdom teeth extracted, and he says it's going to hurt with this, it's going to hurt. But it's going to be over. It's going to take 15 minutes and then it's over. If we couldn't forget that pain, we couldn't exist. So Rabbi Nachman says this is actually a gift, something necessary. It's not a flaw or a fault. It's something that could be applied to help a person. The closing line, the last line in the Torah, in the entire Torah, the bottom line tells us about Moshe Rabbeinu breaking the tablets. When he came down from heaven and he saw the people worshiping idols, he took the tablets and he broke them. And the Gemara tells us as a result of that, that's when forgetfulness came to the world. A person reading that would say, what a horrible way to close the Torah, this whole book that's supposed to be so full of advice and joy and success and happiness. That's the close, that's the bottom line. And the answer is, when we finish the Torah, what do? We start again. We go back to the beginning. A person cannot make a new beginning, a new start, unless they have the ability to let go, to forget the past, to forget that. Without that, we'll never be able to make a new beginning. Any kind, whether it's in business, a close friend that I had in New York 40, 50 years ago, one of the leading philanthropists in the Syrian community in New York once told me, Rabbi, I was in one of his 5 or 6 homes, a home in Florida, in Deal, New Jersey, and here, there. And he says, Rabbi, you should know there was once a time that I didn't have a token to get on the subway. And I started a business and it failed. And I started a second business and it failed. And the third one was a home run. He had department stores in the Bronx. He made a lot of money, and his name appears on a number of buildings in Jerusalem, yeshivas and synagogues that he founded. And he said, you need to know this. You need to know this, that a person who makes a certain effort and it doesn't succeed, it doesn't prove anything. If you're able to let go, put that behind you, start again, you're going to get, if you persist, you're going to get to the finish line. The Torah guarantees this, that if you put in the proper effort and not quit, you're going to succeed.
This is what I've seen, especially we speak about the mystery of the shattering of the vessels. The Rabbi Nasan says the shattering of the vessels, failure is built into creation. You're going to have failure sometimes in marriage. I was divorced, got remarried, tons of failures in business. And the only reason I was able to have success is to say what's next instead of why me. And I think if you just use that word, why me, instead of what's next, instead of why me, you're already 99% of the solution. You'll see this constant growth. You'll see it happen for your benefit. But the why me, it gives you only self-pity. And we don't need self-pity. We need strength. And this is why when something breaks, you need a new strategy, you need a new mindset, and you need to get your head in the right place. The why me is going to trigger the constant low self-esteem, the constant blaming, and that's what really keeps us there. So the key, the shattering of the vessels is a constant thing that's going to happen. And you have to almost get ready to always rebuild. It breaks, rebuild again. It breaks and rebuild again. I believe the Japanese, when they rebuild something, they put gold around it. And this is to show that the repair was much stronger than the breakiness. And this is why you shouldn't be upset about failure. You need to have a different relationship with failure, and you have to understand it's built into creation. And the last thing you should do is take failure personal, because that prevents you from getting the Yeshua and the you already went through the pain anyway. Get a reward for it. That means after that failure, you're going to end up getting a reward for it, because failure gives you a new mindset. It gives you a new perspective. It gives you a new way to do it. You learn from your mistakes. And then you're able to build a bigger vessel. How in the world are you going to learn from your mistakes if you don't have that thing? This is where, the difference of trust. God bless Governor DeSantis. He had a tremendous trust. He had a trust. Yes, he was in a chaos. He was called Death Santis. But at the end of the day, he had trust, and he in the middle of chaos, and he had to take a shot. And look at the reward he got. And this is where we have to we have to have a different relationship with failure. And this is one of the beautiful stories of Nachman, that Reb Nachman they were walking one day when the house was completely burnt. And one of his followers told him, "What are you doing in that burnt house? What are you doing? The whole house is burnt. There's nothing there." And there was a guy picking up the pieces. And he said, "Look at this fool. He's picking up the pieces. The whole house is burnt. What is he wasting his time?" He says, "That's exactly what you need to do. When something is broken in your life, when something is burnt down, when there's no hope, you need to pick up one piece. And that picking up the piece will create the new things." And I think this is the ultimate, what built America with the Klausenberger Rebbe and the big Rebbes that were able to put bricks into America as soon as the Holocaust. I think this is where our resilience comes from today. Any questions? Any questions for the Rabbi? Any questions? Any questions?
No question.
Yes.
You talk about desires, sex, food, and money. When is it enough money? If you're having success, do you not go for more success? Or do you just say this is enough and I'm good?
There are stories about great rabbis who would work, they operated a store, a business. When they saw they reached a certain amount, they closed the store and went to the yeshiva to study. That's what they did. We mentioned the issue of savings. We mentioned before 7 good years, 7 bad years, that there is a concept of putting aside for a rainy day. There was a tzaddik, the Baal Shem Tov, who lived a few hundred years ago, who was on such an incredible high level of faith that it's written that every night before he'd go to sleep, he'd empty his pockets. He wouldn't save any money from one day to the next, because he believed that Hashem gives me a new day. He'll give me the food, the money that I need for the new day. That's an extraordinary high level of faith, that he was on that level. We are not necessarily on that level. Most of us couldn't possibly exist, couldn't live with that. But there's a concept of recognizing that in this world, in the materialistic world, less is more sometimes. Sometimes a person thinks bigger house, bigger, raise the bar on my level of living, I'll have better life. And they find out Hashem says it's not true. It's gonna work against you. Mar benechosim, mar bedaiga. More wealth, more worry. So meaning it's extremely important for each person to judge for themselves within their community, within where they're living, what's a reasonable standard, and to try to maintain that standard as well as I can. Once I have that standard, before I start looking for a bigger and a better and a newer, to think very carefully. Do I really need that? Do I really need that? Is it going to improve my life, or is it going to go the opposite way? Is it going to set a good example for my children? There are many people who have kids and they train the kids to the best and Ferraris, different things. And when a person can't meet that standard, there are people that commit suicide or worse, the suffering that they have and everything. So to know within materialism, within money, these things, the Torah defines what's a reasonable standard. And two people's reason, what could be reasonable for A is not necessarily reasonable for B, depending on you. But when you're at that standard, to think very carefully about going further, going for more. And again, instead of going for more, possibly to save. And within savings, a person say that's endless too. I could work 24/7, save more. The Torah teaches us, when to make a proper judgment, that there's a soul and a body. Both need to be fed. A person who's devoting their life just to feeding the body, just to going for physical pleasures, they're robbing the soul. The soul isn't getting the oxygen that it needs. So we want to come to some kind of a healthy balance of taking care of both.
I mean, I personally have seen that you also have to change your relationship to money, like your relationship to food. If you're looking at food as something that gives you energy, then the relationship. But if money is something that makes you anxious, depressed, and you're always chasing and you're eating with the sorrow, then there's too much emphasis on the control and anger. One of the greatest ways to do that in lesson 13, Rabbi Nachman says, is to give a lot of charity. So charity really cools you off from that desire. And instead of using the concept of force, the power. That means I can trust in God and I can attract money versus forcing it to happen because I need this to happen. I'm always chasing. So power versus trust. Like the more trust you have, the more you'll attract exactly what's coming to you. But the more you try to force it, like you're trying to force a square into a circle, you won't get it. So sometimes opportunities come. You're meant to give a lot of charity, but your relationship to it, do you go home and eat the bread with sorrow, like with depression, that you're not making enough and your neighbors make, then you have a terrible relationship with money. But if money's just a tool to make this, to do this, and God gives you more, he gives you more. I've seen that as a relationship. You have to really change the relationship about money. Usually money is an object that gives people anxiety, depression. Then you have definitely a wrong relationship to money. So change first the relationship to money, and then use bitachon, a lot of trust in God. And then if it comes to you, it comes to you. Versus if I have it and God gives me the opportunity, it's going to stay with me. But if I'm doing it to that nothing is enough, nothing's enough. If I make this, I need to make this. I'm waking up with anxiety because I'm not making enough. Then for sure, you're not attracting it, you're causing it more to lose it. That's what I've seen of my life, and obviously in businesses and all that. It's when you let go and you trust in God, you end up getting more. That's good for you, and therefore you give more charity versus waking up and saying, what's wrong? Why is everybody else making more than me? And eating bread with sorrow and pain. Then you're not giving enough charity, and your relationship to money is not the same. It's not the best. I hope that helps.
I have another question. What would the Rav say would be the 3 most important things that women of the club right now should be working on to tikkun themselves and their mission?
Be nice to the husbands.
question, if everybody heard the question, what are the three most important things we would recommend for women to work on to order? We could offer a lot of choices. One of the most important, I would say, is simcha, simcha, and simcha.
Beautiful. Beautiful answer.
Happiness, happiness, and happiness. Men and women are vulnerable and susceptible in today's generation more than ever before to depression, sadness. The worst plague affecting mankind, and this is not my words, it's in the Torah, is unhappiness. Unhappiness. And Judaism is all about joy and happiness. We're told, Pikudei Hashem Yesharim Mesamchei Leiv. The commandments of the Torah are righteous, they bring joy to the heart. Prayer, we're told, V'simachtim beveis tefilasi. You will enjoy, you will be happy in my house of prayer. One of the greatest mission statement of men is joy and happiness, to be in that frame of mind. The Torah tells us that it's the man's obligation to bring joy and happiness to the wife. That's the wording in the Torah. Meaning that women, unfortunately, are more vulnerable and susceptible to being pulled down. In the original story in the Torah, when the snake attempts to cause Adam and Eve to fail, he approaches Eve. Why not Adam? Why not go? The answer is because she was closer, she was more vulnerable to being pulled down. This is written, these aren't my words. And therefore, this is a critical direction to head to. Now, so how do you get there? The answer is Rabbi Nachman gives a lot of advice. We've touched on some of the points here tonight, that a little bit of light, if you know how to read the map correctly, a little bit of light can dispel a lot of darkness. If there's 5 things good in your life and 50 things not good, that might be proof that you're doing well. That's not proof that you're a failure and you're a loss and you're this, that. That's proof that you have a lot of good in your life. And if there are 5 good, but that's the way Hashem wants us to look at the situation. And if you'll do that, the good is going to grow. It's going to expand. You're not going to remain with 5 good. You're going to go to 5,000 good. This is a critical thing for all of us to work on, to focus on this, and to look in the books for the solutions, what brings a person to happiness. Now, happiness, drugs bring, person takes drugs, they're happy. People drink. That's short-lived. All of us know, anyone with a little bit of intelligence knows that that's short-lived. It's a temporary high at best. And it goes like this and it goes like that. Everyone knows that. So I'm looking for happiness, lasting happiness. Lasting happiness is in peace in a relationship. Lasting happiness is when a husband is as good as he possibly can be to his wife, when he's giving as much as he can, and when she's giving as much as she can. That's a lasting happiness. And all the advice and guidance that the Torah gives us, that's a major fault. Gedale agrees. So we got 2 witnesses here.
I would say perspective, obviously, is major. Happiness is based on perspective. Perspective. I mean, I don't want to answer for women, obviously. This is I might get called on this one. So I would say what the rabbi says. Any other questions?
You spoke about the importance of having your thought process is so important. I agree in terms of having positive thoughts, but I also learned in Judaism that ultimately, we're human and sometimes we drive into our thoughts. You're not having to function. Is it a sin? Ultimately, is it about your actions? Where's that dichotomy of thoughts and action?
I mean, I would say is the dwelling on them. It's going to come to you, but obviously the more you hold it, it becomes a feeling. So the ability to have mindfulness, and our sages even say that you're going to have these thoughts specifically when you do something spiritual. Specifically, the minute I start praying, all of a sudden you're thinking about Tokyo, Como, this. Specifically, these thoughts come to you whenever you're trying to do something good. So the key is obviously to notice them, not being attached to them. When you're attached to them, the ability to have mindfulness, noticing it, it's not me, watching them. And more importantly, surrendering the feeling. I always say, forget about the thoughts, work on the feeling. Because the feeling is what produces the thoughts. You understand? The consciousness of fear is going to produce 100 thoughts and the minute something happens. But if you work on your consciousness is trust, you're going to have a completely different thoughts. That means, one person can get into an accident and he lives in fear, and all of a sudden he's going to say, how am I going to pay my insurance? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? Next thing you get bombarded by negativity. How am I going to pay my car? Who's going to pay my car? How am I going to work? Who's going to take my kids to school? Next thing you know, you have 15, 20 thoughts because of one car guy hit you. A guy living with trust, he's going to look at the car and says, okay, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll make an insurance case, not a big deal. He doesn't get the thoughts. So really the thoughts come from the consciousness that you're living in. That triggers really 100 thoughts based on where you live, where your mindset is. So I would say work more on the surrendering and elevating your consciousness, and then the thoughts automatically will disappear on that. I have many classes on that. That's part of the letting go. Because if we don't let go, these thoughts just become, you don't let go of a bad relationship. You're going to get into a new relationship. All the guy has to do is come 10 minutes late. You're going to think this guy is out in Vegas. Meanwhile, he's changing his tire. Making sure not to live in a very, very low consciousness. A great book is Let It Go by David Hawkins. It talks to you how you get thoughts only come based on the feelings. Feelings produce the thoughts, which is, I always thought it was the opposite. But when you feel better, when you become more conscious and you grow, you think completely different because you become much more better. Yes, sure.
Thanks for your time and also your wisdom. You mentioned this concept where it's like, if somebody does 999 things, they're bad, and one thing is good. Like, they're considered to be good. Are we really supposed to take that literally, or is that really more an aspirational way to think about people and see the best in people?
The answer is it's not being mentioned as a license for doing bad things. That's not the point. It's when a person is examining a situation, a scenario, and they see that this is the way it is. One person is going to say the cup is half full, and the other one is going to say the same cup is half empty. And Hashem teaches us that it's not even that kind of relation. It's not even that kind of ratio. Darkness and light, and I gave that example. You know that if we're dealing with size, a room with 1,000 cubic feet of darkness, light a flame that's 1 inch, the 1 inch can illuminate. There's different levels of brightness, obviously, but that 1 inch flame can give you the ability to move around that room safely, right? So the answer is, it's a way of looking at things to get yourself into a better place. That's the whole point. If you're going to focus on the bad, if you're going to magnify, the more we magnify the bad, the more we go down, we go further and further down. The more we magnify the good, it gives us optimism, hope, and positive movement. But a person would say, but isn't that denial? That's denial. People use that word today, denial. So the answer is that the one who defines, how do we define truth? How do we define truth? Many people have their own definitions of true and false. What's true and false? Hashem is called Emet. Hashem Elokei, Hashem is the ultimate truth. He's the authority on how we define truth. And the authority on how we define truth says that in certain circumstances, in certain scenarios, if there's one thing good about it and there's 10 things wrong, a 10 person's going on a camping trip. There are many people, they go on vacation. They spend $15,000, $25,000 to go on a vacation. They go and they walk into the hotel, they come into the room and there's one thing wrong. Forget it, this was a waste, this was a total waste. The money down money down the drain and everything. Because the person is looking at it a certain way. And another person says, the hotel is good, the pool is great, there's 10, 15 good things, there's this. We can handle this if I put it in that perspective. And again, if I have the ability to magnify the good and to shrink the bad, I will live better. I will have a happier life. both in circumstances and in analyzing, being able to relate and get along with people. Some people look at a person, they see one thing they don't like about them, can't live with that, but can't work with that person. And another person understands that that's not true. That's not the true way of looking at things. The authority on truth, Hashem says, look carefully. See, is there something good in that person? If there is, I will make a sincere effort to connect to that, to focus on that, to look in that, and to be able to have a healthy relationship, a healthy connection with that person.
I mean, many times Rabbi Nachman's saying that one of the biggest problems is we're not judging ourselves favorably. There's a lot of negative self-talk for some reason. This is a constant, people butcher themselves. They have abusive relationships with themselves, obviously, and then obviously other abusive relationships come. But the concept that just speaking victory, speaking Emunah is itself builds Emunah. So if you start speaking faith, you're going to eventually come to faith. But even you see people that unfortunately they're depressed. Studies are showing that as soon as they went to go volunteer, they created momentum. Or as soon as all of a sudden studies are showing that people they just make your room today. That created a little bit more clarity. So just the ability to just do a small step, think big but plan small. And that little one step, the motion ends up creating more motion. So you have to have that mindset because you have to get into motion in order to change your emotion. Good. Any other questions? Yes.
I was just wondering, you spoke a lot about the ability to let go. I was just wondering if there are any specific ways, mitzvah, prayers, or practices that help you forgive somebody that has accused you or that sort of thing. It's not so easy to let go. There's a prescribed way.
Likutei Tfilos. There's a book called Likutei Tfilos, which is the 50th Gate. I think there's a Moroccan version also coming out. I'm just kidding. Humor is a great way to let go, by the way. Humor is a great way. Humor is a great way to let go, by the way. Humor is a great way to let go. But the 50th Gate, there's a book called The 50th Gates, Rabbi Nasan's Prayers. And he teaches you how to basically, again, I can only be attacked if I'm taking it personal. And the more the higher, he has a whole Torah, Rabbi Nachman says that the more consciousness you have, the less honor you need. Okay? But the less consciousness you have, the more honor you need. You see the thing? Once you come to a heightened level of consciousness, you're going to recognize I don't need anybody's honor because I have God's honor. But once we're not growing, which is hard, it's a process, of course, then the more, for example, smarter brain, smaller mouth, right? Smaller brain, bigger mouth. Bigger mind, smaller mouth. The ability to not take it personal because you recognize the way somebody treats you is a reflection of themselves. And hurt people hurt others, and we're victims of victims. So 99% of the things are not even about you. So that's why you can't take it personal, because it's not really about me. Somebody treats you the way they treat you, that's their mood. That's how they're channeling the energy. Very few people take negative energy and says, you know what, I'm going to talk to Hashem at 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to let it go, and things are going to be great. No, very few, maybe 3 in the whole world, 5, 10. Many people don't use that mechanism of prayer to let it go. But the majority of people hold it in. So holding it in is what's causing the problem. And the more you hold in, the more you're triggered by that person. You understand? The more you hold in. So the key is once you start, like if you're in a good mood, let's say all of a sudden you won $1 million and somebody insulted you, you wouldn't care less. Correct? Or let's say all of a sudden you're driving on the road and all of a sudden somebody cuts you off. And next thing you know, you start getting the adrenaline and you find out it's an old lady. And you're like, oh, she didn't see me. But let's say you're driving on the road and you find out some young punk, right? All of a sudden, what do you say? Look at this stupid kid, look at this. You start getting angry. What's the difference? You still got cut off. Who cares if it's an old lady or a little kid? It's what it meant to you. You still got cut off. But what it meant to you at that time is the difference. So I would say, again, David Hawkins' book, Rabbi Natan's work, and just recognizing that work on Tomer Devorah is phenomenal against letting go things. Because you recognize when you forgive somebody, you're literally emulating God every time you forgive somebody. Because whenever we make a mess in heaven, when we forgive somebody, the mess is cleaned up in heaven. So that's one of the best ways, I would say, to letting it go. Not taking it personal, but recognizing that person only hurts me because he is not or she is not in a good state.
When you forgive someone else, you forgive yourself.
Yeah, you're in a consciousness of forgiveness. That's what it's helped me more. But again, you can only do this with growth. You can't forgive people if you're still holding all these things in and you don't feel good. Mazel tov. You can't do that if you're constantly becoming that, that having that mikdash mindset that I'm always getting insulted. If we're too sensitive in a way, it's because we're holding too many things in. Because at the end of the day, the key to really growth is having an open perspective. That's the key. When you have an open perspective, you don't take things so personal. But when we don't have an open perspective, we make everything about us. This is what Rabbi Nachman, I believe, said, that humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. Not less of yourself, I'm not less of a person, it's just I'm not so self-centered. It's not everything about me. Everything is not always about me. I tell this is the first thing I work on in rehab, because everybody, unfortunately, have a bad childhood. They come in with all kinds of failures, abusive, and you have to explain to people that it's never too late to have a happy childhood. And a lot of times it's the parents that treat them the wrong way. Just like you would never be able to blame a father who's handicapped for not dancing with you. Because he can't dance with you, he has no legs, God forbid. And it's his limitation. So that's when you could start going to a place of mercy.
Rabbi Gedale, thank you very much for your time and your effort. One of the things that you mentioned, Gedale, especially you mentioned, is the fact that you have to be able to envision success before you even start. How do you do that, and how do you break the paradigm of you can't divide the spoils of before actually doing things?
Right. I've done this in the past. So when you have a good past experience and you've done it, you're able to tap in, like our sages say. Sometimes you have to recall the good that God's done for you, and then just recall the good, and then sing out to the future. So what I've done is I've used experiences that I've used this formula, and it's worked. And I've used times where I didn't use this formula, and I suffered. So basically, I'm taking a formula that I know that works. Think about it, dwell on it, resent it, doesn't work. Think greater than I feel, sing in advance, jump for joy, works all the time. So I've known from the past, this works, this doesn't work. That's my method of doing.
Rabbi Nachman once mentioned that if a person is undertaking a big project, like we know the Talmud, studying the Talmud, it's about 2,700 pages. And many people look at that, just lifting up the books, it's 20 volumes, and just to hold, some of these volumes are heavy just to hold. How am I going to get this into my mind? And he said a person who wants to undertake such a project should think in their mind, plan it out a little bit. I'm going to do 1 page a day, I'm going to do 3 pages, and think of that during the year there's going to be this circumstance. I'm going to plot ahead. And by thinking positive, thinking that I can and will get to the finish line, and envisioning what's that going to be like. Imagine what my parents are what my kids are going to say, how proud they're going to be when they see it. That mindset will help you get there. And we've seen people that have done this. This isn't something, in heaven. We've seen people on earth, working people who have all kinds of obligations, put their mind to things and accomplished it. So I can do it. I can do it.
I mean, you can look at the science like Joe Dispenza, and they all talk about the science of healing. It's all of it is emunah, faith, healing already in the mind, because the mind is stronger than the body. So if you can heal in the mind, that already produces the chemicals to heal. That's what Rabbi Nachman says. The emunah is healing. So healing there's a concept of faith, and faith is all about thinking greater than you feel in the current moment. Faith it till you make it, exactly. Faith it till you make it. Not fake it till you make it. Faith it till you make it. Exactly. Good? Good. Great. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you.
I was taught to search for better days. I was taught there was always good. And when the better days turned into a grace, I did the best that I could. I could take you to the place that you don't know, in the place where you cry but you want more. When you look into the mirror, you won't perfect. Mad at yourself cause you know you feel worthless. Don't feel lonely in a crazy generation. Through your loves of light like no hesitation. Saved from the storm by my daily meditations. And I'm wishing for some better days. Hey, hey. And I'm wishing for some better days. Hey, hey. And I'm wishing for some better days. Get older. Rabbi Nasan once said, here's another one who wants to be perfect, but she won't, she gave up, it's not worth it. That's why you ran around the country with your backpack, searching for yourself, but you got caught in the rat pack. Those were my words 30 years in the future. In the meantime, you're looking for a tutor. Noise get too loud in your head, you just mute her. Stress in your life that you know you gotta lose her. Hey, hey, don't get older. Rabbi Nachman once said, hey, hey, you can start all over. Yeah. Hey, hey, don't get older. Rabbi Nachman once said, hey, hey, you can start all over. Why do you think they just don't like me? I do not take it so lightly. I wanna be their friend, but they hate and they fight me. Every single time I try to fit, it was tight. See, I'm living with the devil so deep and inside me. I need some help, cause they just call me loco. So I took his head and put it in a chokehold. Never will I give up, even though that was a dream, yo. Oh my god, that was a dream, yo.